The thing I've used my Steam Deck for more than anything has thus far been emulation. Being able to play basically any game from any console, especially on a handheld system, is just the best. The ROG Ally, with its extra horsepower and Windows installed by default, should mean it's actually a better playing experience for those games that require a little more horsepower, or in the Xbox 360 emulator's case, just outright requires Windows. In this video, I want to walk you through the setup process and then give you a handful of games to have a look at. Getting the various emulators set up is a bit more of a process than on the deck, as EmuDeck, the brilliance of one-click setup tool, isn't yet publicly available for Windows. Still, all the emulators you would expect work on Windows, and one, Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator, will only work on Windows. The majority of the setup process for all of them really just involves going to their respective GitHub pages, downloading the most recent release, extracting those files to somewhere you fancy, and then copying your ROMs and just getting going. There are a few specific steps you'll need to do for some of them though, so let me show you what you need to do. For Yuzu, the Switch emulator, much like any other system, you'll need the encryption keys and firmware from your Switch. You'll need to copy these to the Yuzu folder in App Data, Roaming, Yuzu, and Keys, and the firmware goes to Yuzu NAND System Contents Registered. Bit of a mess, I know, but you plop them down where they need to be, and then you can copy your ROMs into a folder, mine is just in my documents, and then add that folder to Yuzu. You should then be able to fire up any game you fancy just fine. For the PS3 emulator, RPCS3, after extracting the emulator files, you'll also need to download the PlayStation System software. All of this will be linked in the description, by the way, if you're interested, and then hit File and Install Firmware. Then you can add your games. Now, PS3 games can be encrypted, and you'll need to follow the decryption guide on RPCS3's site to decrypt them. But in short, you will need to find the title ID for the game you want. In my case, I have Need for Speed Most Wanted here. You need to look through the IRD database for the game's name, and then depending on which region your copy is from, you want to download the relevant IRD file. In my case, that would be BLES01660. You can then use the ISO Tools program to decrypt it, and finally copy that decrypted ISO to the games folder in RPCS3's root directory, wherever you extracted that to. For the Xbox 360 emulator Xenia, while there aren't any decryption steps you'll need to worry about, I would recommend using Xenia Canary, the beta version essentially, and you'll want to download the Xenia Canary patches and place that in the Xenia folder. Again, you'll need some Xbox 360 ROMs, and you'll also want to open the config file and change a couple of things. You'll likely want to use Ctrl+F to find the word license, and then change license_mask = 0 to =1, so that any Xbox arcade games will play the full game and not just in trial mode. You'll also want to find the word mount, and make sure that mount_cache is set to true. It was by default for me, but it is worth checking while you're in there. Lastly, you'll also want to search for the word patches to check that apply_patches is set to true. Again, it was for me by default, but again, it's probably worth checking. I'm also going to link to a fantastic video by the Retro Tech Dad, which includes a load of extra information and config tweaks for various games that you might be interested in, and that, like everything else, will be linked in the description. Lastly, for Dolphin, the Wii emulator, it's possibly the easiest setup, save for one little thing: the controller configuration. By default, Dolphin will not recognize the Ally's controller inputs. I found the best route was to add Dolphin to the Armory Crate app list with the add button at the top, and then select the controller template for that, and then you can launch Dolphin. You can then click on each input in the controller configuration menu and press basically every key and button and joystick axis on the Ally to map them all separately. This is pretty tedious, but you should only have to do it once, so it's not too bad. Otherwise, you're pretty much ready to go. I did enable the borderless full screen mode in the graphics configuration, along with setting the internal resolution to 3x native for a better look, but those things are more sort of personal preference, so really have a play with what you find works best for you and looks best for you, because the Ally has plenty of performance for Wii games, as you'll see. So that's all of them set up. Now let's give them a try. I'm going to start with Yuzu, the Switch emulator. So I'm starting off with what is, I think, my favourite game of my entire childhood, which is Pokemon. When I had a Game Boy Advance, I, in fact, actually still have it somewhere, but that Game Boy Advance pretty much only played Pokemon. Specifically Emerald, I think, was the one I had the most, although I'm pretty sure I have Leaf Green as well. This is Pokemon Shield. I've actually played Sword fully on my Steam Deck, completed it, obviously, but I thought I'd play Shield on the Ally for a little bit of a difference. Obviously they're basically the same game, but with slightly different Pokemon available and slightly different champions and challengers and things, but still, as you might expect, this runs perfectly fine. Now, I am running in the 30 watt TDP mode. You really don't need to, although it is currently drawing 29 watts for the AP, or 30 watts. But it's important to note that Pokemon, especially these Switch games, are limited to 30 FPS, pretty much regardless of what system you're on, and so it's running at pretty fairly solid 30 FPS. There are a couple of dips. In fact, it's currently at 24 during this cutscene, but throughout actual gameplay, it is perfectly fine. The fun thing about emulation is that there is always weird bugs. Like, as you can probably see, the Pokemon like floor mat on the grass is glitching through. It did this on the Steam Deck on Pokemon Shield as well. Or Sword, rather. So you do have to put up with that sometimes, but that is, I think, probably the buggiest part of emulation and emulating these games that I've found, especially on my Steam Deck. Alright, my first Pokemon battle against my friend, Hop. And now we're running at a solid 30 FPS, good. 66 degrees, the fans are definitely giving it some. Although we're only drawing 19 watts from the APU, which is nice. I kind of like that Score Bunny just kicks the sheep. Kicked it until it fainted. Hey, it learned Ember, fantastic. Well, Fire type works well against Grass type. Super effective, fantastic. And there we go, I won my first Pokemon battle. Quite interestingly, looking at the stats for the CPU and GPU load, the maximum that I'm seeing is like 40% GPU and currently 17% CPU. Because it's locked to 30 FPS, it really doesn't have to try all that hard, although it is still drawing a fair amount of power to do so. So to clarify, this is actually Super Mario Odyssey, which is also a game that can chug a little bit on the Steam Deck. Obviously this is the first time I've launched it. There is a little bit in terms of lag spikes, so the frame times aren't perfect, even though we are getting 55, 60 FPS. Generally speaking, so something to have a go with. The fans are definitely giving it one though. Wow. Cappy! Get me some coins. I feel bad throwing him into the cap, into wooden pillars though. but we're still running at 60 or so FPS, about 20 watts of power consumption, so you could definitely run this without the charger connected, and you shouldn't have much of a different experience. Oh, come on. No, I'm... Come on. No. There we go, that's better. Sweet. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Dolphin the Wii emulator, as I think you can generally tell that most Switch games are going to play fairly well. You're going to get the expected 30 or 60 FPS pretty much all of the time. And for the Dolphin emulator, you're definitely going to get all of the performance you would expect. I thought I would start with actually, what is it, a GameCube game instead, which is Simpsons Hit and Run. I'd never had a GameCube or a Wii growing up, so I didn't play this all that much, but I did play it like friend's house and, you know, at the sort of soft play areas that happened to have a GameCube lying around. And it was a lot of fun, I remember. And it turns out that even though this is in 4:3 and certainly could do with a bit of a touch-up and a remaster, perhaps, it is a still pretty decent experience. I can't quite jump up to the Buzz Cola card up here. I probably have to go somewhere else to do so, but yeah, why not? Let's set the house on fire. I've already done the first couple missions with this, and as I said, pretty decent experience. I am, like I said, running borderless full screen, and this is actually 3x native resolution as well, so an even sharper experience than usual. But yeah, it's good fun. Sorry, people. I am collecting all of the lost items that Homer has borrowed from Ned. Don't mind me. There we go. Get back in the car. Head the other way again. Ooh, sorry. I know that it's hit and run, but I mean, it's kind of hard not to hit and run in the game. Chair in the middle of the road. I don't know why Homer would have borrowed the Flanders family portrait, but he has. There we go. Now I can return home. All right, I think that's a good look. Let's do the one that I think we all know is possibly the most famous in terms of Wii games, which is Mario Kart Wii. I'm gonna see if I can nail a trick shot. No, I couldn't. Ah well. It's okay, because I have a homing trick shot. Oh, I don't like getting inked. Oh, I'm second. No, I can't be second. Oh. Oh well, pretty good race, pretty good performance. Locked 60 FPS, not even drawing the full wattage. We're only at 22 watts right now. So pretty decent. And as you might expect, any sort of Wii emulation is going to be a pretty good time. Now, when it comes to the Xbox 360 emulator Xenia, this is a little bit more hit and miss. I'm sure that there are plenty of games that can work, and actually the Retro Tech Dad video that's linked in the description does show a number of games working remarkably well, but in my experience with a couple of games that I kind of want to play on this, which is Skate 3 and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, it's a little bit hit and miss. Now, we're running at 30 or so FPS with 43 watts drawing from the APU right now, and while this is technically playable in terms of the FPS, I don't know if this will come through quite well enough on camera, but the input latency is horrendous Like, it's unplayably bad in terms of I press a button and then it takes 100 to 300 milliseconds for that action to start showing up. And obviously with a game like Skate, where a lot of it is about your precise timings on flips and grabbing the board and all that sort of stuff, it just makes it very, very difficult to play. There may be some other patches and tweaks and things that you could do to improve this experience, but I mean, it's currently, at least from what I can find, and I am using all of the available patches, not the best experience for me personally, and so I'm gonna pretty much leave it at that. But if you're interested, obviously, and if you have an Ally, please do give it a go, give it a tweak, see what settings you can find to make it a more playable experience, because sadly this doesn't work on the Steam Deck, especially without Windows installed. The other title I have here is Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, one of my genuine favourite games from the Xbox 360, and unfortunately this one is very much the same. While we are supposedly getting 87, 109 FPS average here, there are so many stutters and general frame time issues that it really doesn't feel like we're getting that, and it now says we're getting 40 or 50 FPS. Again, it still really doesn't feel like it. And again, the input latency is really quite bad. And so unfortunately this isn't really playable, at least for me. Now, the Retro Tech Dad video that I've mentioned a couple of times, and as I said, it will be linked in the description, does show this working relatively well. So there might be some other tricks and optimizations and tweaks that I am missing that, you know, might make this a better experience. And so if you do find that, please do let me know in the comments. Also, there are a few other weird bugs, like it might be difficult to see, but there's a 2D sort of noise texture over the cart. In fact, it's kind of easy to see as it follows you around there, and there are a lot of random sort of effects like that. In fact, around the mini-map on the bottom left, the bottom right, sorry, I often get a very similar effect, and same on the start screen. Although luckily that isn't there right now. For example, that there, you get that sort of thing a lot with these weird like textures over stuff. So yeah, unfortunately the Xenia emulator games that I have don't seem to be working very well, but I know that there are some that do work. So again, if you're interested, check out the video linked in the description. And lastly, I want to talk about the PS3 emulator, RPCS3. Now this is a bit of a weird one because it really depends on the game how well it will work. And also there are a couple of things like every game seemed to take forever to load, as it's like, even if you pre-compute the cache and that sort of stuff, it can take a fair while to get going. But once it is going, you do have a pretty decent experience, at least in some titles. I have Need for Speed Most Wanted, the sort of newer one here, as I'm hoping that that means I'll get a better experience. But from my experience playing with this specific game, it's not the smoothest, unfortunately. So there are a couple of other weird things, like right now we are getting 30 FPS, which is okay, although again, the input lag isn't the best, but we're also missing all of the reflective surfaces, which is a little strange. It still compiles shaders on the fly, which is something I've noticed with the PS3 emulator a fair bit, is that it will just continually be compiling shaders with that little pop-up in the bottom left. This is actually playing a lot better than the first time that I played this, which is why I haven't actually completed the introduction, let alone anything else, because it was running at 5-10 FPS at most, and was obviously rather unplayable. But this is a lot better. We're getting 40 FPS or so, which, while not perfect, I'd like to see, you know, a smooth 60, if not more. Certainly isn't that bad. We're drawing 30 watts from the APU as well, obviously plugged in for the best possible experience. But yeah, besides the fact that there are no like reflections happening right now, it's alright. And last but certainly not least is Skate 3 again. This was released on both Xbox and on PlayStation 3, and I must say that it is so much better using the RPCS3 emulator in the PS3 version. This is a locked 60 FPS as we're playing it. I am obviously plugged in with 30-watt TDP, but we're getting a very smooth experience, and the input latency is so much better. There is still some extra input latency compared to the Steam Deck's types of inputs, as I showed in the review of this, which will be probably, hopefully, in the cards if I remember to put that there, but it's a much better, much more playable experience. I could definitely play Skate 3 with this emulator on the Ally, which is a very nice thing because I genuinely enjoy Skate 3 quite a lot. So that is a look at a little bit of how to set up some emulators on the Ally and a bit about their performance. Of course, especially for the more modern systems like PS3 and Xbox 360, those are relatively powerful machines. And as powerful as the Ally is, especially compared to things like the Steam Deck, it's still not quite a full, gaming machine. It's nowhere near as powerful as a gaming laptop, for example, let alone, full desktop. So your experience is still likely to be a little on the iffy side. And of course, with those newer systems, they generally have a little less of either development, or there's just a few bugs that will happen no matter what system you're running on, as with kind of all emulation really. So take that as you will, but it's definitely a really cool experience, and to be able to play basically any game you want from any console you want, it's just a really cool thing and something that I love about the PC space in general. With that said, if you have an Ally or a Steam Deck or any of the other handheld consoles, and especially if you're doing emulation, I'd love to hear more about that in the comments down below. What games are you playing? Are there any sort of tips and tricks that you've caught on that you think people should know about? All of that stuff I would love to hear in the comments down below. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this one, you can hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. There's also plenty of other videos on the end cards if you are interested, and there's also a load of ways to support the channel through YouTube, Patreon, pick up a hoodie or t-shirt like this one, or a load of other designs I made myself, pick up an open source response time or latency tool. That's all in the description, and a load of other stuff down there if you're interested. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you on the next video.